What up, guys? Yeah, today we've got a little bit of a different kind of video coming for you. I will be looking at the best and the worst beer cities in the National Football League. Now, whether you're going for a game or you're just kind of, debating which city's better than the next one, beer is always very important. And so I want to look at which NFL cities have the best overall beer available. And of course, I have not been to all of the cities, and so I'm not just going off of just personal preference. So I had to create kind of some guidelines to try to guide me through making these selections. Now, first, I am looking at the metro area of the particular city. So let's just say Miami. I'd be looking at what breweries are located in that metro area. It doesn't matter what breweries are on the other side of the state, because if that was the case, then it'd probably be just California would be the top beers. So, or top NFL city. So no, it has to be located in the metro area. Now, of course, the metro area is going to be varying in size depending on the city, but that's just kind of the best outline I could pick out. Would be what breweries are located in that metro area. And so, keeping that in mind, I looked at what metro areas had at least one beer listed in Beer Advocate's top 250 beers made in the United States. So if a brewery has a beer listed, that kind of counts as a point for those particular cities. And so I kind of went from there. That was one of my rating criteria is, how many breweries in that metro area has a beer in the top 250. Next, I also looked at just kind of some of the name recognition of some of the microbreweries. Because there's some breweries have a strong following, strong name recognition, but don't currently have a beer in the top 250. In the past, they probably did, but it's not there currently. So I did look at some name recognition. There's going to be some that might surprise you that don't have any in the top 250 presently, but I try to use that to weighing some of the rankings. And then I just kind of looked at the number of craft breweries in the area. It's kind of hard to look at just like Yelp and Google reviews of some of the craft beers. Because a lot of times you have just non-beer drinkers that just kind of rate it. And there's usually kind of a local, people will up their local craft beer. And here's the thing, a lot of the times, you'll go to a craft brewery or a local, micro, and the beer is just okay. It's the same beer that you've had at every other craft brewery, but they'll have a 4.9 rating on Yelp or something like that. So, I looked at the number, but I didn't really go too deep into the smaller microbeer ratings. If they have a good enough beer, it will be on the Beer Advocate top whatever list. So just keep that all in mind. I try to do this as fair as possible. On future lists, I will try to tweak my criteria and have more specific points involved in ratings. I think it could be fun to look at, say, college conferences, your Pac-12 or your SEC, your Big Ten, whatever. Look at each kind of college town and have a more specific point category for ranking the best beer college towns in the conference. I might get into that a little later. Eventually, I think that could be a cool thing. But for now, we're looking at the NFL because it is the middle of the NFL season. So let's start off. Oh, and also before I go, before I begin, some of the cities I kind of had to put together. So, for example, the Oakland Raiders, for now, until they move to Las Vegas, the Raiders and the 49ers are both in the same metro area, so I kind of, had to put them together. And I did that for a couple spots, but I tried to keep each individual city as, individual as possible. But without further ado, let's start off at the worst and work our way up to the top. I'm not going to go into too much detail on some of these the suck-ass beer cities. But anyways, bottom, I put them into different divisions. This is the bottom dweller division. At the very bottom of the worst beer in the United States for an NFL city is Nashville. Not a good, I mean, you can make a good sauce, but not a good beer, apparently. But thankfully, you do have all that barbecue and great music and everything to kind of deter you from the suck-ass beer that's going on. So, Nashville. Bottom spot. You guys can improve. You can only go up from here. Next is New Orleans. You know, it's hot and humid, but when it's hot and humid, you can kind of get away with just drinking something cold. A cold, crappy beer is great when it's hot and humid out. And again, you have all that New Orleans food, so, you know, whatever, but cheap beer is all right for New Orleans, but yeah, bottom spot. After that, we got Jacksonville. And I find it strange that Jacksonville is the most populated city in Florida. You don't really think of that. You always kind of just tend to go to Miami, but Jacksonville's much larger. Despite that, there isn't a great beer scene in Jacksonville. You know, you might have some craft stuff, but Jacksonville, no, whatever. Next on the list, Phoenix. Phoenix sucks with beer. I'm sorry. It's not good. I mean, the biggest craft brewery is Four Peaks, which is owned by InBev, and I have yet to have a beer from Four Peaks that was really anything better than decent. And sadly, the quality of beer is not able to improve the quality of the Arizona Cardinals play. We'll see what the Cardinals end up doing. Although I do like that they have a actual grass inside of a dome. I mean, you can open the ceiling, but that's never really open. But I do like the grass inside. I think it's a nice touch. And then rounding out the list for the bottom dweller division is Houston/Dallas. Yes, I included both of them. They're not really the same metro area, but they both are not that great for craft beer. There's really nothing going on. And like I would just end up saying the exact same for Houston as I would for Dallas. So they're both kind of like 1A, 1B for ending this list. But again, it's hot. Houston, extremely humid, all that stuff. So again, cheap, cold beer. That's all you really need. So that will wrap up the bottom dwellers division. Next is the at least you're kind of trying division. It's a lot of these breweries aren't that much better than the bottom dwellers, but I felt like, you know, they're a hair better. You can find a few better options, but it's not that much different. But anyways, next one on the list is Buffalo. At least you got good weather, right? But hey, the Bills are looking pretty decent this year, so maybe you do have that going for you. They gave the Patriots a run for their money the last game. So, and you know, you got a few more, I think, breweries that can make some decent porters and stouts and stuff like that. And for those other breweries, if you notice, they were basically all warm, humid cities. They don't do all the porters and the stouts and some of the more hearty beers. You're going to get a little more of that for Buffalo, so thus Buffalo made it out of the bottom dwellers and is here. After Buffalo is Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh might be one of the biggest surprises for me at just generally how poor the local metro craft beer scene is. And, you know, Yuengling is like a cult beer, but it's not in the metro area. And, you know, I don't know. I assumed the Berg would be higher rated than this, but it's not. What are you going to do? Following Pittsburgh is Baltimore. You know, those two rivals are also rivaling each other with how not that great the beer scene is. But hey, you guys won a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer. Isn't that enough? Do you really need anything else than that when your Super Bowl quarterback was Trent Dilfer? Like, seriously. After Baltimore, we have Indianapolis. Now, if only 3 Floyds could have been in the Indianapolis metro area, you guys would have been way higher on this list. But, you know, in reality, 3 Floyds is actually closer to the Chicago metro area than Indianapolis. But, you know, what are you going to do? Although it's funny, Three Floyds is located in Muncie, Indiana, which, for you Parks and Recreation fans, that is Jerry Gergich's favorite vacation spot. So who knows? Maybe he is a closet Three Floyds fan, and they just never talked about it. All right, after Indy is Green Bay. Now, it's Green Bay is one of those cities that's a little tricky to rate with the other cities, just because it's so much smaller. I mean, you're comparing like Metro Los Angeles to Metro Green Bay. I mean, is there even like really a metro area around Green Bay? It's small, so you're not gonna have as many options. So it's difficult to rate it. But again, there's not a lot of great beer options. It's just one of those things. But it's also one of the reasons why I like the NFL. You have almost like these random cities. Like Green Bay has that. I mean, Buffalo is not quite as random, but still, it's just interesting to include it with some of the other larger metro areas. But again, Green Bay. And the final city rounding out the at least you're kind of trying division is Philadelphia. And basically with Philadelphia is see Pittsburgh. The reason. It's also one of those kind of disappointing things. Like I would have expected more from Philly. But, what are you going to do? There's not a whole lot of great, rankable craft beers coming out of Philadelphia. So, all right, next next division that I made is cities with a beer pulse. Now, each of these cities has at least one beer or one brewery with a beer listed in the top 250 American beers, or there's at least a well-respected brewery within the metro limit, the metro area. So keep that in mind. They're starting to pick up steam. They can't compete with the top brass of this list, but anyways, so I guess the bottom ranked team in the beer cities with the beer pulse division is Washington, D.C. Now, they do have Aslan Brewery, which is the only reason it's on the spot. Otherwise, it would have been knocked back down into the other ones, into the previous category. But they do have something going for them, so Aslan Brewery saved them. Next team is Atlanta. Now, Atlanta doesn't actually have a beer listed in the top 250 currently, but within the metro Atlanta limits, which is huge, they do have Sweetwater and Terrapin, which those two, there's name recognition. Both breweries make some decent stuff. I'm including Atlanta above DC. Next is Kansas City. Now, KC and Atlanta I thought they were pretty close to one another. Neither one of them had a top 250 rated beer. But I find that Boulevard is better. I like them better than Sweetwater and Terrapin. So basically, this is me pulling I like this brewery over the other brewery kind of rank. So because I felt they were both kind of interchangeable, I just went with the ones that I thought was better. So I'm rating Kansas City above Atlanta. Next category, next one, just above Kansas City and pretty close to Atlanta is Charlotte. Again, this is kind of debatable. You could kind of almost, swap it, Kansas City, Atlanta. You could kind of, go all over the place. But I rated it above the previous two is because Heist Brewery does have one listed in the top 250. The others don't. So because of that, I'm putting Charlotte above the other two. And, okay. Next is another brewery or a city that I thought would have just smashed this competition. I thought it'd be top 5 if I just had to list something off, my fingers. And it's Seattle. I think just because Portland is, of course, Portland's in Oregon, but you just assume Pacific Northwest is going to be so much more dominant in this category. Seattle was not, because Fremont Brewing Company was the only brewery it had in the top 250. Other than that, it doesn't have a ton of name recognition in the metro area. Of course, Fremont does have more than one beer in the top 250, which is why I pegged it above Charlotte. Now, after Charlotte, you got Detroit. Now, if only the Lions would move in Grand Rapids, maybe they'd actually make it to the playoffs and win a playoff game. But they'd probably get bumped in the top 5 because Grand Rapids, that metro area has a ton of highly rated craft breweries. Metro Detroit, it does not. The only brewery that had one beer in the top 250 out of Metro Detroit is, I'm sorry if I butchered this name, is Kunlun Brewery. I think I said that right, but I apologize if I didn't. Kunlun Brewery. But Stroh's is also back. Out of Detroit, Stroh's is back, and Stroh's is going to be that next like hipster Pabst 2.0 kind of thing. I already see it. Pabst had its moments. I don't know if it's still really kind of that hipster beer, but I could definitely see Stroh's kind of taking up the mantle of Pabst, and just so happens that Pabst owns Stroh's, so whatever. But so yeah, Detroit. If you wanted to, you could probably swap Charlotte, Seattle, and Detroit with each other. They're kind of very close. This whole group is very kind of packed together. Now we got Cleveland after Detroit. Now Cleveland has one brewery in the top 250, and that's Fatheads. But I'm giving Cleveland the nod above all the others, and I'm giving it kind of a sizable nod over the last few. And that's because Great Lakes Brewing Company is based out of Cleveland. Now, I couldn't believe Great Lakes Brewing Company did not have one beer ranked in the top 250. They have some great beers, and they're kind of one of those old school craft breweries that have been around for forever, and you almost like forget about them. There's so many other crafts, popping all over the place. This is one of those that tried and true craft beers that you just kind of forget about. Like the Elliot Ness Vienna Lager, I think is one of the best Vienna lagers made in the States, and so since it didn't have a top, Great Lakes didn't have one in the top 250, but I gave them the nod because of that name recognition quality craft beer. So, yeah. And then the last metro area rounding out the cities with the beer pulse is the San Francisco, Oakland area. And sure, it rents like $1 billion per square foot, so it's going to be a little more costly to run a brewery there. But they do in the metro area have Russian River, which is located in Santa Rosa, which is north of both areas. I think it is kind of a stretch to include Santa Rosa into that metro area, but it is technically part of it. So I'll let it slide. And so Russian River is quality brewery, and because Russian River is so prominent in the top 250, I am giving it the nod above Cleveland and the others in this division. And now the top NFL cities with the best beer. This is the division I call the Division of Champions. Now, all the cities in this division have at least 2 breweries with a beer in the top 250. And a lot of these also have some decent name recognition for craft beers that didn't make top 250 but have solid name. And so the entry-level city in this division is Miami. Now, I was actually very surprised. I would not have guessed Miami would make it into this division. And it did because Funky Buddha, which is located north of Fort Lauderdale, is still technically in Metro Miami. I'm kind of surprised that this is technically Metro Miami, but according to how everything's set up, it is. And so Funky Buddha really helped it out. So it has J. Waterfield, which is a solid brewery, and then Funky Buddha, and then it has Funky Buddha is a good hour north of Fort Lauderdale, and Fort Lauderdale is already like a good hour north of Miami, dealing with traffic. It's a bit of a drive, but Metro's Metro, so I can't really argue that. And then, MIA out of Miami is just kind of a fun local brewery. Beers are fine, they're good, nothing special, but it's decent, worth at least noting. Again, they got 2 breweries in the top 250 with J. Waterfield and Funky Buddha. Next is New York City. Now, you might have thought New York would be high on the list, but a lot of the best beers out of New York are not in New York's metro area. You have like Oma Gang and stuff like that. They're, not in metro New York. But they do have Other Half and Evil Twin. Both breweries have at least one in the top 250, and they get the nod over Miami because of Brooklyn Brewery. Now, again, Brooklyn Brewery, much like Great Lakes, doesn't have a beer currently in the top 250, which again is surprising because I think their chocolate stout is one of the best stouts on the market, but it's not right in the top 250. But because that Brooklyn Brewery has that name recognition, I'm giving it, City of New York, a bump over Miami. Now, next on the list, this is the top 5. So number 5 on my list of best brewery beer cities is Minneapolis. Look at like a burp going up. So the Twin Cities of Minneapolis have some great ones. You have Lethbridge and you have Surly. Now, Surly, I think, is one of the best. I don't even know if I can call it unknown breweries. It doesn't have a massive distribution region, but if you get like was it Todd the X Man? I think Todd the X-Men, I think that's what it is. If you have a chance to try a Surly beer, do it. It's going to be great. And I think it's one of the best just craft beers in the area. I mean, in the country that doesn't just like pump itself up. I mean, there's some beers, craft beers, you hear so much hype about that just like, it's like, and it's almost no way they can live up to that hype. But Minneapolis, it's right there. Oh no, that was I lied. That was number 6 on the list. I can't count. So, just outside the top 5. Now, inside the top 5 is Tampa. Again, one of those cities you like, really? Tampa? The Buccaneers? They haven't been good since Gruden. Gruden's not doing so hot at Oakland. But anyways, Tampa, within the metro area, has Cigar City. Again, one of those great craft beers. I think the distribution is starting to pick up, but Cigar City and I'm giving. Tampa and Minneapolis are kind of interchangeable, but I think Cigar City has a few more top 250 beers than Surly, so I gave the nod to Cigar City and Tampa. And it's actually pretty close. It might technically be closer to Funky Buddha than Miami, but it's not in the metro area. But I'm giving Tampa. I'm rating Tampa above Minneapolis. Now, 4th on the list is Los Angeles. And Los Angeles has a ton of craft beers, but there's only actually 2 that have a beer in the, they only have 2 breweries that have a beer in the top 250, and that is Bottle Logic and the brewery, spelled Bruery. Of course, they also have some other known craft beers like Modern Times and Golden Road. Me personally, I'm not a fan of Golden Road, but what are you going to do? And now they also have a tap room, a Firestone Walker tap room, but I'm not including that. I didn't include Firestone Walker because it's not in the metro area. Now, Firestone Walker does have tap rooms in other areas around the country, but I'm not including. I only am including breweries if it's based out of that area. And so I think there might be a Firestone Walker tap room in Cleveland too. There's a few in different other spots, but the beer is made in like Central California, so Los Angeles can't claim it. So I threw that out there in case you're wondering, well, what about Firestone Walker tap room? It's there, but I didn't include it just because the beer's not really made there. It's more of just a tap room bar than an actual brewery. So all right, the top 3. Next is Denver. Denver really came out swinging. Denver's got some great ones. They have Avery and Oscar Blues, which are some of the best craft breweries in the country. And I mean, in terms of name recognition, it's not really a craft, but I'm including Blue Moon in that list. I know you might kind of scoff, but I feel like for a lot of people, Blue Moon was really that entry craft beer. At least for me, I know for me, it was that entry beer that was like, hey, there's more than just lagers out there. You know, I had that a long time ago. But yeah, Blue Moon is kind of that entry. That entry drug into the world of craft beer for a lot of people. At least at one point in time it was. And, you know, for a massive produced beer, I think Blue Moon, not too bad. So, yeah, Avery, Oscar Blues, and Blue Moon. So, Denver, number 3. Number 2 on the list is Chicago. It is, of the last 2 breweries, it is only these 2 have at least 3 of the last 2 cities. Each of these last 2 cities have at least 3 breweries that have one or more beer in the top 250. Now, Chicago's 3 is Goose Island, Revolution, and Pipeworks. Now, each of these beer have at least one. Even though Goose Island is owned by InBev now, Goose Island still makes some quality craft beer. I really enjoyed their Oktoberfest beer. And besides, you're going to need as much beer as you can get watching some of that quarterback play out of the Bears. It's like the Bears, for some reason, always just a quarterback away from being really good. But, you know, Chicago, you got stuff going on. So, yeah, you are number 2 on the list. And number 1 on the list, the city that just seems to be winning every damn thing always for the last decade, is Boston. Now, again, they have 3 on the list. You have Treehouse and Trillium. Those, they don't even distribute, but they have numerous beers in the top 250. I mean, they're crushing it. And they also have, Sam Adams also has one in the top 250, which is that $250 or whatever. I don't remember the thing with that, like that bronze. I don't even know I can't remember what it's called. I think it's something like U or something. I feel like Sam Adams is a little pushing it. I mean, Sam Adams, I feel like for me, is a very safe brewery. They play it safe a lot. You can't really go wrong with the Sam Adams beer, but they do have the one in the top 250. So I give them that. And they have a lot of other just beers in the Boston metro region. So Boston currently is the top city for beer, according to all the stuff I kind of looked at. Technically. Blame the damn Chargers for leaving San Diego. Because if San Diego still had an NFL team, if they still had an NFL franchise, which is kind of, I wish Los Angeles had one and San Diego had one, but no. If the Chargers still had one, they would be the de facto number 1. Because while you have Trillium and Treehouse in Boston, San Diego has Lost Abbey, AleSmith, Alpine Stone. Each of those have a beer in the top 250. And they also have Mission and Ballast Point, which they don't have currently a beer in the top 250, but they're worth mentioning. So San Diego would have blasted them out of the water. But they don't have a beer in the top. I mean, they don't have an NFL city anymore, or NFL franchise anymore. So the Padres will win when we get to the baseball one. So that's just something to. So yeah, San Diego not included, but they would be number 1. And just a quick side note, I want to throw out if Grand Rapids or Portland ever had an NFL franchise. Portland could. Grand Rapids is just too small. But if they ever had an NFL franchise ever moved there, they would be in the top 5 instantly, because each of those cities has at least 3 breweries in the top 250. So they would probably, they might be competing with Chicago and Denver. But yeah, that is my spiel. That is my list of the best breweries, or the best NFL beer cities. What do you think? Which cities do you think have the best the best beer in the NFL cities? I tried to do this as fair as possible. And again, I'll tweak my mathematical formula for upcoming lists. If there's a upcoming list that you'd like to see, let me know. Do you think that ranking the beer cities in college, SEC, Pac-12, ACC, Big Ten? If you think that'd be cool, let me know. I think that'd be kind of fun to kind of compare some of them. But let me know. Like, subscribe, do all the good stuff. And so, for myself and all the NFL beer cities, take it easy.